Congresswoman, there's more than one hearing, as I mentioned. What do you see as the purpose and the accomplishments thus far of this set of investigative hearings?
Well, first of all, in terms of our subcommittee hearing today, one of the goals is to begin to entertain legislation to address domestic terrorism. I am concerned about that, however, because I think with the best of all intentions, I am concerned that we pass laws on domestic terrorism and then they get enforced on African-American activists. Just like over the last few years, we were fighting the FBI's categorization of black identity extremists, which I don't even believe exist. But what you saw in the hearing, though, is that you saw my colleagues on the other side of the aisle just outright lie. How you could make a comparison to rioting, to the attempted overthrow of the government is just absolutely no comparison. And so because for the last 4 years we had a liar-in-chief who has essentially normalized lying, I'm now seeing my Republican colleagues essentially adopt that behavior as well. They always did to a little extent, but now the wholesale mischaracterization of what happened on January 6th is extremely dangerous because in the last 4 years, white supremacist organizations have mushroomed. And if we don't get a handle on it, I agree with Malcolm Nance, more to come is going to be much worse.
Yeah, and bringing Gene in, we're discussing facts that have been under assault and hate. Yeah. And when you have those two things together, it's a real problem. Jon Stewart used to joke about reality having a well-known liberal bias. And there are larger pockets of the country that when they hear certain facts, like what I just mentioned, officials saying what the threat is, right? There was a time when there was a larger foreign threat of related to ISIS and al-Qaeda terrorists. That was a larger threat. But right now, they hear that, oh, white supremacists and other white hate groups are the threat, and they feel wrongly like that's a bias when indeed it's the reality. And for that point, Gene, in your analysis, we did want to show something we've put together briefly that will be familiar to the Congresswoman as well, which is every living FBI director speaking to this point, regardless of party. Take a look.
Much of our history is not pretty. Law enforcement enforced the status quo, a status quo that was often brutally unfair to disfavored groups.
Domestic terrorism as almost as important an issue as the international terrorism, whether it be white supremacists, militia extremists, sovereign citizen extremists.
A huge chunk of those domestic terrorism investigations involve racially motivated violent extremists fueled by some kind of white supremacy. And I would say that the most lethal activity over the last few years has been committed by those type of attackers.
Gene, all violent hate is wrong, but there are FBI directors emphasizing the larger problem with violent hate in the United States today is from white thugs, killers, terrorists.
Yeah, that's just a fact. But you see the developing Republican narrative. I mean, I know you'll be shocked at this, but they seem to be ready to try to gaslight the nation into believing that what happened at the Capitol was actually equivalent to what happened last summer and nothing all that special. They seem to want to ignore the fact that it was, in fact, you know, in many ways an attempted coup. It was an attempt to overthrow the government, to stop the government's functioning and the orderly transfer of power. It's a very serious thing. They're ignoring the fact that these people came prepared for war, prepared for combat and battle, and that they are organized in groups that have been around for a long time. And as Merrick Garland said at his hearing, you know, you can draw the line straight back from what happened at the Capitol to the Oklahoma City bombing, and you can draw the line right back from there to the, you know, to the birth of the Ku Klux Klan after Reconstruction. I mean, it's there, it's happening, it's the truth, but they're going to try to obscure the truth with the fog of lies.
Yeah, and Congresswoman, there are surely leaders in government, yourself, Maxine Waters, who we've discussed this with before, who've been sounding the alarm about many of these issues, including the racial disparities, for a long time. We also have covered the fact that other leaders, not exclusively, but often black leaders in America, have been warning about this outside of politics for a long time and recounting stories and documenting what's happening in their community. Dave Chappelle is known to many for many things, but he's got a brand new series that I guess you could call it a comedy piece, but it's, boy, is it serious at times. I want to play a little bit of it for your reaction because it's his reaction, his take on January 6th. Here it is.
I'm from Washington, D.C. A lot of my friends growing up are Capitol Hill police officers. I said, what did you do that day? What did we do? We were kicking crackers down the steps like mother 300. They carried a Confederate flag through the rotunda. The Confederate Army didn't even do that. You went very far.
He's a Washingtonian. He's upset to the degree that some of it we, of course, can't air on a family broadcast, but yet that raw emotion is what we heard from other officers and other people around the country. I'm just curious, your reaction.
Well, absolutely the same. I mean, the raw emotion, the anger, the idea that this would actually take place and people were allowed to run amok here and we were not prepared. And the idea that the FBI sent notification, but the Capitol Police didn't get it. Well, why the heck didn't they pick up the phone when someone didn't respond to their email? I mean, it is just absolutely inexcusable. I know that Malcolm Nance said that this was known for a long time. As a matter of fact, he was writing a book and he waited until after January 6th to finish the book because he was waiting to see what was going to happen. So this was widely known. It's just inexcusable. And if you want to talk about white racial terror, you have to go back many, many, many years. As a matter of fact, a couple of 100 years. So this kind of white supremacist behavior is nothing new in our communities. And what I am hoping now, since it was on the display for the world to see, is that maybe we will finally begin to address this problem.